a lot of smog, just muck has been,
stuff,
a lot of just crap has been put out.
Yeah. So let's just kind of suss this down real fast with just some of the basics that we've got.
Great.
These are really the things that I've sussed out that are kind of the easy facts. We've got what people refer to as possibly an out-of-place artifact. They're weird. They're round rocks. They have grooves around their equator, and they're in a material in the earth that doesn't match them, and they don't really seem like they should be there. They're kind of cool looking based on the images that you see on the internet. And I would say it's about the size of a golf ball. About an inch, wouldn't that be about?
Actually, they from what I've read, they vary from about half a centimeter to like 10 centimeters, which is about 4 inches. Those are the largest ones that I've found.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've seen the variants, but I don't work with centimeters, so I'm always confused when it comes to putting that in relation to something in real world, which is why I asked, is that around a golf ball?
Well, I do the down and dirty thing, which is a centimeter is pretty close to half an inch, close enough for government work anyway. So
okay.
10 centimeters equals 5 inches. Knock off a little bit because a centimeter is actually a little shorter than a half an inch.
Right. So we're looking at a softball then.
Yeah.
Some of them, anyway.
Very few, I think. I think they tend to be kind of more towards the small end of the range.
Well, the one that they show on the internet all the time is about the size of a golf ball.
Okay.
And it's got this really weird divot in the front of it, which, along with the fact that it's got grooves around the outside, everybody goes crazy for. And they all say it looks like the Death Star.
Well, it kind of does.
That's kind of the best facts that we've got about these things from the start.
It could have been an alien blueprint for the Death Star. It's using a strange three-dimensional blueprinting technology.
They did a 3D print of it, and then they dropped it, and it fell to Earth.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, the Rebel Alliance actually stole the blueprints and then, dropped it on Earth because nobody would ever find it on Earth.
I guess, I think it is fair to say it does kind of look that way, though.
The one that you see all the time kind of does.
Kind of.
Well, except the Death Star actually only had one groove around the middle. This one has 3.
True.
Yeah.
That's why it's kind of.
No, the one that's got the hole in it, it just has the one.
Oh, you're right. It does have the single groove. Yeah, you're right. It is a single groove.
Oh, my God. It is the Death Star.
It looks exactly like the Death Star. That is so crazy. We're going to have to, of course,
that's probably the one that we put up.
Picture.
Yeah.
You know what
it'll probably go up on our website.
What they need to do is the scientists need to get a basketball and sort of put that thing in orbit on the basketball and see if some rays come out of it and destroy the basketball.
Totally, yeah.
Oh, and before I forget, I know we left Fantasyland already, but Joe and I were chatting about this earlier, and I'd forgotten about this piece of the story until he brought it up, was about the fact that these things rotated.
Yeah, they're supposedly according to, I shouldn't say according to, but Rolf Marx, the former curator of the Klerksdorf Museum. Yeah, he was quoted as saying that they were stored in vibration-free cases, and yet they turned around on their axes all on their own. Yeah. So
I do think,
and we'll debunk that in a minute. But
one of the interesting things is, I was just looking at pictures because I'm really good at focusing on what we're doing here.
Yes.
And it's like there's this outer crust and then the inner layer, right? Most of them have that inner layer, and you cut it in half, and it's distinct. Right? And I think that's a thing that you see a lot in weird things that might, obviously they don't rotate on their own, but might, be more prone to rotating. Maybe it was a misinterpretation of if you spin it, it rotates really well or something.
I'll tell you what, Joe.
Yeah.
Go ahead and spill the beans on what happens and why these things rotated.
Oh. Yeah. So this of course made its way 20 times around the world before somebody bothered to actually contact this guy, and that's Rolf Marx, former curator of the Klerksdorf Museum. Somebody contacted him and asked him about this, and he said that what he had told people is that they were sitting in cases, and because there's a lot of mining operations nearby, there's explosions going off in the earth, and there's vibrations all the time and tremors in the earth. And these things were not in vibration-free cases. They were in cases that were vibrating because of all the mining going on around. And so naturally they were moving around a little bit on their own, and that's really, really creepy, although maybe not so much. Because,
And then the story got spun around, so now they're vibration-free cases.
Let's put some more credit credit where credit is due. This guy, he's in charge of, or he's credited with perpetuating a lot of these crazy things, but as soon as somebody contacts him, he's like, that's not what I said at all.
Yeah.
You guys are idiots.
Well, and here's the great thing. That's a perfect place to start. So let's go ahead and let's talk about some of this story and where it came from originally and how it got so fantastical so fast.
Great, yeah.
The first time the story came out was it 1982, Joe?
Well, apparently, in 1979, in October 2nd, 1979, issue of the National Enquirer. And then
So you've got the National Enquirer.
And then the same article or somewhat modified article was published in the June 11th, 1982 issue of Scope magazine.
Yeah, and just so everybody understands, Scope is a tabloid
Scope is the National Enquirer for
of South Africa.
South Africa.
Every
Yeah.
country has to have one.
Yeah,
And
at least one.
It was known for inflating its stories just to make giant headlines, just to sell a paper,
Kind of like CBS.
or the Weekly World News.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Which, coincidentally, the Weekly World News published this story several years after the fact.
Of course they
you
did.
You didn't know they recycled stories endlessly?
I didn't realize they
Yeah,
did that. I
yeah.
thought Bat Boy was just always up to funny hijinks.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we can see really easily how this thing got so crazy
yeah.
so quickly.
Yeah.
With so many made-up claims.
Absolutely.
Is the best way to say it.
Yeah.
The thing that I said earlier about NASA having gotten a hold of some of these and being perplexed and not knowing how they were made and why they were so perfectly balanced, yeah, that never happened.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
There's no record at NASA of anybody ever giving them one of these and examining it.
Yeah, I think
Oh.
that actually I might have an answer to that one too.
Oh, do you?
Maybe.
Yeah,
And
you
actually,
did
I
more
should give
research
some,
on this than I did.
I should give some credit for this. A guy named Paul Heinrich wrote an article in a publication called Reports of the National Center for Science Education. His article is called The Mysterious Spheres of Ottosdal, South Africa. And it was published in 2008.
Okay.
And he was the one that came up with that thing earlier. He was the one that he actually found the first publication of this in the National Enquirer. So this guy actually did all of our homework for us. So thanks, Paul. Thanks, Paul Heinrich. We really appreciate that. So he said this is probably where the NASA thing came from. So for a brief time, the Klerksdorp Museum webpage had the text of a letter from a guy named John Hunt of Pietersburg, South Africa. And this letter claimed that the results of an examination of one of the objects by the California Space Institute, which is a research unit at the University of California, found all sorts of fantastic things. They said that its balance is so fine, it exceeded the limit of their measuring technique. And this letter also said that the California Space Institute, where these scientists supposedly were, is the organization that made gyroscopes for the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, or NASA. So that may be where that sort of entered into
What
the
time?
tale.
When was that letter supposedly sent?
I'm not sure when it was sent. The date when it was spotted on the museum's website was 2002. But it could have been.
I'm going to guess it was probably up there for a while,
It could have
which
been
is
up there
why it
for a
worked its
while.
way into the story so firmly.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So that's a problem with the story.
Yeah. So anyway, and actually, it turns out this same guy, Paul Heinrich, the guy to whom we owe so much because he did all of our legwork for us, actually contacted a scientist at the California Space Institute who said that he did remember examining one of the objects and that he had actually gotten it from this guy named Hunt. But and he said that nobody there ever told Hunt that these things had the extraordinary properties that he claimed they did in this letter.
Of course.
Yeah, and he suggested that there was, quote, some error in transmission, unquote, which is a polite way of saying somebody's full of it. And he also said that the claim that the California Space Institute makes gyroscopes for NASA is completely untrue.
Oh,
That's true.
So,
That's true.
So-
They
So now
don't
we've
do
got
that.
So this thing's kind of unraveling for us.
Yeah, pretty much. I think they're just rocks.
Yeah, and you know what? There's two other things that I'm going to point out real fast, and then we'll get into some theory stuff as to what are they or where they came from. There was at one point in the story there was a comment that said they were so hard they couldn't be scratched by steel.
What does that even mean, though?
That's the problem because there's a bazillion grades of steel.
Didn't we just talk about this in the Oofbert.
Yes.
There's
we did.
steel that's just the worst.
And they're super solid, pure steel. So that just saying it can't be scratched by steel doesn't say anything.
No,
That's not a measurement that you can put out there and have any credibility about.
Yeah, no. The guy, I'm going to beat this Paul Heinrich thing to death here. He actually, as I said, he's actually given several of these objects, and he actually sawed a couple of them in half. So if it's harder than steel, how do you do that? He said that he examined them, and they had, there's a thing called the Mohs scales, M-O-H-S.
Yep.
That's a measure of hardness.
Yeah, hardness, yeah.
And he found none of them to be harder than 4 to 5 on the Mohs scale, and he said that a rating of 7 to 8 is more typical of steel, of hardened steel. So they're not harder than steel.
No.
Yeah.
Here's the other thing. They're called spheres, but they're not round.
Well,
What?
they're not round?
They're not perfectly round. They're actually, most of them are okay, they're not like a golf ball, perfectly round. They're more like a squished golf ball. They're kind of wide in the middle, and then they taper up and down. So they look like something that's been
discs,
squished. They're
kinda?
more like a disc shape.
Yeah, and
Okay.
some of them are pretty symmetrical.
Yep, there are some that are very symmetrical.
You know, but some of them are not.
And a lot of times they're found clumped together. The way I saw it explained that made a lot of sense is like soap bubbles. You know, when you're a kid and you blow soap bubbles in the air, and then a bunch of them join together, and
Are they actually clumped together like that?
they're stuck together like that.
Huh.
Which
That's interesting.
is
'cause
a little
you don't-
weird.
You don't see any pictures of them like that.
you do see some when you start looking around. And here's the one thing I'm going to point out is, you know that awesome picture that makes it look like the Death Star?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That photo is stretched to make it round.
Yeah.
That one's actually evidently a little flat.
Oh.
And that photo has been drug so that a little upward, a little downward, so that it looks a little more
A little more
perfect.
spherical. Yeah.
So
Yeah, there's not. I've looked at numerous pictures of these things. I haven't seen one that was actually spherical.
I haven't seen one that was perfectly round. I mean, there's some that are pretty close.
Yeah, and some of them are pretty symmetrical, like
Yeah,
you said, but still not spherical.
that's about where it ends. So let's get into some theories about these things.
Yeah, let's.
Because they're still weird.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
still don't make any sense. It's
Yeah.
very odd. And we're going to go ahead and we're just going to go straight to what standard science says. Which
We're
is-
going rational to irrational.
We're going to go rational, irrational. That's a
instead of
perfect way.
irrational to rational.
Yes, we're switching it up today.
Okay.
That's
all
just
right.
what Halliburton and Big Tobacco want us all to think.
So the first thing is modern science says that they're natural formations.
That makes sense.
It does. And I really had to kind of read through this to figure out how this would happen and how this works. So I'm gonna walk through this, and we'll do what we can to make this as understandable as possible. According to and you were quoting him, Paul Heinrich. The spheres are actually what are called concretions. They're not made out of metal, as Joe was saying, so that's a big issue. They're spheres made out of hematite, which is an iron ore mineral, and that they're volcanic concretions. So here's how this works, to just kind of break it down into the simplest way, because they're in the pyrophyllite, which is soft, but it's not continuous all the way down. In other words, there's pockets in there. There's voids in the material. And sediments come down in water, and they percolate down through that material, and when they hit that void, evidently, according to how a concretion works, is that the metal that's in the water is separated, and then it begins to build up, and it fills in that void. So basically, it fills a hole.
That makes a lot of sense to me, that like the water would just settle in these pockets, right? And then it would get warmer, so the actual water would evaporate, but the minerals that were in the water would stay.
Right.
And then it would happen.
It doesn't evaporate per se, but it
goes
spreads
away
right. Yeah.
for whatever reason. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it would keep the mineral deposits would keep happening there. And the picture that I kind of think is like a water filter, right, through charcoal.
Yeah.
Is it's the same kind of variance of material.
Yeah.
So the charcoal or the
Pyrophyllite.
is filtering out stuff and it's getting stuck in these pockets.
And the reason that there are the rings around the spheres is because that just happens to be that there was a ring in the pocket where they were formed.
Yeah.
That's the only explanation, according to science, is that it just happens to be at that midway point, or it's somewhere in there. There was some kind of groove that they grew into, because as they build up, they're going to fill in that pocket.
I guess to play aliens advocate.
Yeah.
Right?
Aliens advocate.
Right. I
Yeah,
mean,
love
but
it.
there are a lot of these spheres, right? And a lot of them have these kind of, that just seems like a big coincidence to have happened that many times in that kind of perfect way.
And that,
Just
you
throw
know, with
that
the
out
rings,
there.
the ring-
With
you
that many of the spheres to have that many rings that perfectly.
The only thing
I don't know.
the only thing that I could think of that maybe could have explained it is, let's say that there's this void and the concretion is developing in there, and it gets about halfway, and then the earth settles a little bit, and so the material around it is going to try and fill in that void, but it can't do it now because it's partially occupied by this mineral deposit. Does that make sense?
I guess, but I feel like it would have filled the whole thing in, so you'd get these like semicircles.
That might be why
Right.
they're
They're
flattened, though.
flat, but then they still have the rings.
They do. But here's the
I
thing.
don't know. I'm just
Here's-
playing
I-
aliens
No, I
advocate.
understand. And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But here's the funny thing. These are not the only kind of spheres that are found. It's
Oh.
not like Klerksdorp's the only place that we find these.
No, they are
Really?
fine. I'll just a quick aside, though.
Yeah.
From my longer article by Paul Heinrich, apparently, the way I understand it from reading his explanation is they don't fill in hollow spots in the sediment, but instead they just sort of they seep through and they start to build up within the sediment itself. So they're reacting with the material of the sediment.
Oh, so it's like glomming together.
Yeah, and so the rings are because the sediment basically is in layers, and so there's some fine layers of those are just, some layers are finer and more dense than other layers above and below them, and so the concretion occurs more slowly in that particular little piece of layer, and so that's why it doesn't grow outward as much, and so you get a little indentation or a ring
Weird.
in the object, and then it goes up a little bit, and it's back to the less finely grained sediment, and it grows out to the original diameter, and so that is how the rings are formed.
I guess, yeah, that's interesting. It's just so interesting that it would be a sphere then, right? Or like close to a sphere. You know, that it would just be like that little bit in the middle, and then, oh, it's perfectly compact or whatever.
But that does,
for
I
it
mean,
to
both.
be.
But that does also explain the ones that have multiple grooves around them.
Oh,
Yeah.
If it's different densities, I guess is the right word to use, of the
Yeah.
sediment.
Yeah,
but why is it spheres, right?
yeah,
I
that I don't know.
I don't
Yeah.
understand it enough, but I do know that concretions happen.
Yeah, totally.
all
Yeah,
the
and
time.
according to geologists, this kind of thing is very common. As you were about to say, they occur in many other places around the world.
Right.
Yeah.
So we've got the Moki marbles, which are from southwest Utah.
Yeah.
And they're about the same size. There's a couple places on the east coast of the U.S. that have very perfectly roundish looking sphere rocks that are totally normal. Australia, there's the Hammersley group. That's another one. And I've seen some of these, and some of these rocks, I mean, they're rocks, and they're perfectly round, and they're like the size of a cannonball or more.
Well, they're the ones in, I guess, South Africa, or no, South America, which I assume I'm sure we'll do a show on at some point, that are giant.
Yeah.
Right? That are like 8 or 9 feet tall.
I'm not familiar with those ones.
Well, we'll talk about them
Okay.
later. They're giant, and they are like spheres as well. I suspect those are from something else, but they also, I guess, could maybe potentially fall into this category. Maybe.
Well, you know what those are from? Do you remember the first Indiana Jones movie?
Yeah.
Well, and that giant ball at the beginning that was rolling down, attempting to crush him as he invaded that temple to plunder its treasures.
Right.
Right. Well, those it's theorized, from a single manufacturer.
Oh,
South Africa.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you were making stuff
and
up
again,
so much
we'll
today.
talk. I mean, I'll probably do a show about
Yeah.
this at some point. But the like indigenous theory is that it was giants. It was the marbles of giants.
Marbles of giants.
Awesome.
Yeah. So
I like that.
throw that out there.
I like that.
Yeah.
The next theory that we have which is still within the realm of plausible, is meteorites.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we know meteors hit our planet all the time.
Yeah.
And a couple billion years ago, there was probably a bunch more hitting the planet than there are now.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Things were different back then. I don't think we had as strong of an atmosphere. That could be completely a bad scientific statement to make, but
No, I
don't know.
think the solar system was in more states of
Flux?
upheaval.
Yes, that's a
Yeah.
good way to put it. There's also a lot of reports of meteors being discovered in Africa on the
It's
continent.
a huge continent, so that doesn't
It is
surprise
kind of
me
big.
at all.
I'm sure there's
They're
lots of meteors there.
well, yeah, they find them, and they find them all over Africa all the time. And if you follow the, is it Pangea? Is that the
Yeah.
theory that we started out as one continent, and the big chunk of it was we all broke off from Africa, so
yeah.
Africa was kind of the center of it. So
Also, Africa, one of the least developed countries, right? Or continents. It's not even one country.
right, there's not a
So-
whole lot. Last year in North Africa, they found a meteorite that was actually part of Mars.
What?
Evidently, according to this report that I came across, it was a chunk of Mars.
Yeah,
that they'd been scraped off and came to Earth.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of thing has been documented. At times Mars and the Earth and the Moon have been hit with really gigantic objects. Look at some of those craters on the Moon.
Well,
Yeah,
the moon
and that's-
is a product, right, of us getting hit by something really giant.
That's one theory, although there's other theories. I mean,
Fair.
I don't know that one's really a prevalent theory anymore.
Next
but,
week on Thinking
Yeah,
Sci-Fi.
I know. We'll talk about that. We'll solve that.
The moon!
But yeah, you get smacked with something really enormous. And
Yeah.
it's
Gonna
send
take
lot
a
of-
chunk
it's
out
gonna
of
set
ya.
a lot of material flying.
Yeah,
So,
but it's completely plausible that it could have been meteorites, and they bury themselves in the ground, and then sediment continues to build up on top of them. We could have had, bunches and bunches of meteor storms that were hitting this one area and dropping these stones.
Yeah.
And what hits at the end is what's left of a larger object.
And it's been eroded in a very interesting manner, usually, right?
Yeah.
So that would explain the spherical nature.
That could possibly explain it.
Yeah.
Yep, that is very true. So if they are meteorites, then that would also explain why they're not the same as the sediment that they're found in,
That's true, yeah.
because they're a little different. And this kind of object has been spotted in other places, namely Mars.
Wait,
remember-
what?
Yeah, I knew that would take a second to sink in. In 2012, the Mars rover Curiosity sent back images of spheres that were embedded in an outcrop on Mars and they call the place, what do they call it? Kirkwood, which is it's in the western rim of the Endeavour crater.
So how do they know that this place is called Kirkwood? Is there a sign? Yeah. Hello.
Anyway, they found on Mars, and they took images of a bunch of what could be concretions like this set into the surface. And they're about the same size, so it could be that the ones that are on Mars are a product of the natural process, according to modern science, or it could have been other meteors that were buried and then slowly excavated by winds and whatnot.
That's crazy.
Well,
I was
maybe.
just looking at pictures, and they look a lot like that.
They do.
That's crazy.
That's what the weird thing is. I think they nicknamed them. There's more than one kind that they've found, and I remember one of them they called them blueberries.
They look. This is gross. They look like boils.
Oh, nice.
But they do.
Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. You now have a visual.
Yeah.
So they were formed on Mars, and then Mars gets hit with a really massive rock, and they're sent over to Earth, or vice versa. They're formed on Earth, and then they get sent over to Mars.
Yeah, either way. So it looks like they're happening on another planet. So it's either one of these two theories could apply to both planets.
One of these things is not like
That's
the
cool.
other.
You know what's not like the other though? Our next theory.
Yeah? What's that?
It's Devin's favorite.
Aliens?
Aliens.
Ah,
Okay,
Okay.
here we go.
Okay.
So there's a lot of people who use the Klerksdorp spheres as proof that there was a civilization on our planet before us.
Okay, wait. I'm going to take offense to the term aliens in this context.
Why is that?
I'm going to say this is a prehistoric intelligent race.
Yeah, but
Because
not
they are not aliens because they existed on our planet as predecessors to our race. I feel like aliens implies people from intelligent beings from a different planet coming to Earth and not settling here, not becoming Earth beings, not becoming Earthlings.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Not people who are not native to Earth or people who do not settle on Earth.
A prior civilization of beings.
You're welcome,
Is that
everyone.
okay?
That is much better.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
But I mean, you would like this distinction because you think that they might have been some race that evolved naturally here on the planet?
Or lived here, right? I mean, that's the implication of this theory. Is that they
it's not
resided here for a long time.
Saying that they were on this planet for some duration of time.
Yeah, so I would say that those are like prior native Earthlings.
Okay, natives? I doubt that they originated that far. Because when did life actually originate on Earth?
Well, so
that's
right.
what we've got. Because
Yeah.
according to the established age of these spheres, they're Precambrian. Mm-hmm. At that time, the only record of life that we can determine was on this planet was algae.
Yeah, that's exactly. Just microbes and things like that.
Yeah.
Right, so but this theory, if I'm understanding it correctly, is that there were sentient beings, intelligent beings that were creating these things that existed on Earth at that time, right? That's how this theory goes?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, which
So
is
you
a
find
little
that
odd.
No, I don't find that credible. Are you kidding me? There would be dead bodies somewhere. Like, we would have found a fossil of some kind.
Yeah, we would probably
Unless they were, like, boneless algae creatures, which maybe.
Yeah, I could just see algae producing one of these things. Yeah.
Wait, what's that one critter that's always on Futurama?
Yeah, Kif.
The green glob?
Yeah, Kif.
No. The green glob that eats you and everybody can see you floating around in his guts because he's a green glob. They were boneless.
It was just, all it was like, what, phytoplasm, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
there.
okay, so like I'm
Entirely
willing
plausible.
to accept maybe if we're saying that.
Maybe some sort of algae-based
We've
life.
beaten that to death. Here's where then the spheres come in, is then people come up with all kinds of explanations of what that civilization would have used them for. If we just run with the theory that there was some sentient being on this planet.
Atlantis?
Could have been Atlantis, but we don't know.
Okay.
But we're just running with there's some kind of civilization, then what were the spheres used for?
Oh, yeah, they were used for...
A lot of things, according to the
Cannibals.
theories. They were currency.
No.
They were ammunition.
Maybe.
They were talismans.
No.
They were a form of art.
Maybe.
They were a form of a record-keeping device.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
No, listen. Okay, too giant to be currency, right? Like, who wants to carry that around? Really? I mean, truly, even if you're a giant, you don't really want to carry that around, okay? Art, maybe, probably. Form of ammunition, maybe. That's about the right size.
Well, wouldn't we be
probably.
finding little cannons they would have been shot out of, though? But
Probably. Right. Talismans, who wants to wear something that big?
People do it all the time.
Listen, in like
I've seen some of the
strands,
weird jewelry that you've worn before, and it's
but
not
in
exactly
like
small.
big
Some of them are
strands,
small.
though, right? Like you don't wear one pendant. People do sometimes, but then you would find other things, and there would be holes in it. Throw that out there. And then I just think,
Well, the thing about it is, too, is that, again, if they're like, say, talismans or some form of currency, whatever, then that would imply a fairly primitive culture. And again, it's not possible for there to have been any sort of primitive culture on this planet at that time, at that point in time.
No,
because the culture. So the only culture that could have been here was a sophisticated alien culture that came and hung out for a little while, a long time.
absolutely.
Who knows?
I think that's true. And I'm with Joe on this one, is that like if this is something from a leftover from a culture that is a culture sophisticated enough to have exited the earth before any of them died, right? Or left any record that we can currently recognize as living beings dying. That's a hugely sophisticated culture. They know how to work metal. they're not carrying around metal balls.
Yeah, and why would they? And why would they make these stupid little things when they could do much cooler stuff like iPads?
Yeah, totally.
Which we would have found some fossilized remains.
So
of.
as it turns out, I'm with Joe on this one.
Yeah,
That's unusual.
It's super unusual.
Yep. Okay, well, I'm glad we've got that one settled.
Cool.
Now we get to have even more fun because we're going to the outer edge theory.
There's more.
There is one more.
Okay.
Okay. Right off the bat, this is very far-flung, and the links of piece A to piece B are kind of tenuous, but we're just going to take these as leaps of faith as we run with this.
They always are.
All right, so to start off with, we need to get off the planet Earth.
Oh, where are we going?
yeah.
We're going to go to Saturn.
Oh.
Well, how are we going to get there?
With the snap of my fingers, we're there.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just that good. Well, there is a moon around Saturn it's the 8th moon of Saturn, called Iapetus.
Saturn is hoarding moons.
They've
got more than their fair share, don't they?
They have way more than they need. Yeah.
They're like the 1%.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like occupy Saturn.
Occupy Saturn. Hashtag Occupy Saturn.
There we go. The first thing we need to look at when we get to this moon is...
I'm sorry. What did you say it was called again? I wasn't paying attention.
Iapetus.
Okay.
The first thing that we want to look at when we look at this moon is the equatorial ridge that's running around the moon.
Okay.
It's got a big old ridge going about 75% around it, so it's circumference all the way around. Mm-hmm. That ridge is about 12 and a half miles high at its peak. Mm-hmm. It's 124 miles across at its widest.
It's one heck of a ridge.
It is one heck of a ridge.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing, so it's weird because it's got this ridge, which is kind of like the spheres. They have a ridge, though it's
not
in, not out.
Kind of a reverse ridge.
Yeah, they have an innie. It's got an outie.
Mm-hmm.
But the next thing we want to look at is that, and this is based on photos of the moon, and I don't know how much validity I put in them, but according to the photos of the moon, if you look at it, it's got a rectilinear geometry.
What are you talking about right now?
Yeah.
So it's not spherical.
It's not spherical.
But okay, so it's not a sphere, but what does that even shape mean?
That shape means that it is what they call in some of these articles an icosahedron.
What?
An icosahedron.
I'm sorry, a what?
It's kind of like
It's
cube,
a 20 plus
except
sided object.
Oh, a D20.
So
Yeah, exactly.
it's got polygons and hexagons making up its sides. So yes,
it's a D20.
It's a 20-sided dice. Yeah.
Yeah, if you played Dungeons and Dragons, then you're quite familiar with that piece.
High
Yes.
five.
Yeah. We almost succeeded. There we go. That's better. Yeah, white people really do have more trouble doing the high five.
We are bad at it. It's not good.
All right. So it has, according to these observations, this odd structure to it, and that, along with the fact that there's a huge depression on the surface of it that's in the shape of a hexagon, plus this linear geometry along its outside, so it's not round, it's like it's made by math, it's a mathematical shape. People say it's not really a planet.
Well, I think, okay, and again, aliens advocate here, right? Mm-hmm. But I feel like that is a good point. Things that are made by nature, by and large, are spherical in some way. They may not be a perfect circle, they may be an oval. They have rounded shapes because that's what nature or the universe or the laws of glom together in kind of a sphere, not with these like weird
flat planes
on them. And I feel like that's
that's not typical of planet and moon formation.
Yeah, and it's okay, so maybe it's pictures, maybe we're totally inaccurate, maybe the pictures are like reflecting something weird or whatever, but that's weird. If it's true that that's how that moon is shaped, that's weird.
Mm-hmm. It's a little odd.
But I've been looking at these pictures again, like while we're doing this, and there are a lot of pictures of the spheres that have like weird kind of angular sides a little bit to them, right?
They're not actually nice and smooth and round.
Yeah.
But I've got to say, I've looked at pictures of the Iapetus, and it doesn't look to me like a D20. It looks like it's pretty much spherical, except for the ridge.
It's in key photographs that people point out that, hey, this isn't actually a round object, and that's you're finding the photo that you're looking for is kind of what everybody else says. Oh, that's the one you were looking for. No wonder you're referencing that one, but. I can see how you would say that because most of the things that you see, it doesn't actually look like it's got flat edges to it.
That's weird.
Yeah, it looks kind of spherical to me, but with a weird, funny ridge around the middle.
Yeah, and I think it's personal. I think it's something to do with the ridge that makes it weird, but I don't know. Okay, well, let's just say that we're just going to run with this, that it's a D20 is actually what this moon is.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Well, then what's that mean? If it's a D20 and it's not naturally occurring, then that splits the debate in half as to what that means for Iapetus. Actually, it doesn't split into two, it splits it into three. I apologize for that. Some people say that it was a Death Star type planet for some species that's no longer around. In other words, they were going to use it as a weapon of some sort and then either won the war or lost the war or were wiped out by the war. I don't know what, but they're not around anymore, and so it drifted until it was finally caught by Saturn, and now it's just in Saturn's orbit.
Yeah, you know what happened is they were going to come to Earth and kick our asses. And they came down and we turned them onto things like pot and tobacco and that
Yeah, I don't think that's it.
So beyond the Death Star, what else could it have been?
Well, we have the theory that it is a world-sized arc.
I kind of like this theory.
I kind of like it too, although I don't really believe it.
This is saying that it was used by some other species to carry the seeds of life across the galaxy until it found the inappropriate planet, and then...
Until it found a Goldilocks planet?
Until it found a Goldilocks planet, and then it sent down all the biological material that was needed, and that was carried in the spheres...
Well,
so the spheres hit, they release everything, and then it's like, well, my job's done, and it just hangs out.
And isn't it worth mentioning that, like, within
right in that
century of these rocks being dated, this is when we have an explosion of life.
I don't know if you could date it precisely enough to a century.
I'm sorry.
But
within a reasonable
within 170
amount of time,
years, let's
within
say.
within 102 years.
Okay, there you go.
In a very...
But within,
on a global timeline,
right.
in a very small fragment of time, suddenly around that Precambrian area is where things just exploded.
Yeah.
You're absolutely correct.
Yeah.
I feel like there's something worth it.
Yeah, the only problem I have with that theory is that if these things were containers of life, then shouldn't they be popped open? I mean,
no, because didn't we just talk about this? We talked about this in the Spanish flu episode. Is that true? And that, like, if it had a frozen shell of seeds around it, right? It was frozen and it entered the atmosphere and everything kind of melted and everything fell to the earth and then everything bloomed? No?
So it could be... No, I know where you're going here, and I remember part of that where part of it was pulled away and not all of it was burned up, and I think basically what it means is the sphere is kind of the rubbery, squishy inside part of your golf ball, and the outside of the golf ball is what carried all the seeds of life. I don't know. I don't know.
I like this theory kind of a lot.
I knew you'd like this one.
Of course you did.
I knew you would. You
and
go
again,
for this one.
and you know, to like not to go on a tirade here, but I'm gonna a little bit.
Yeah.
I just think that like it's a big mystery of our history of our planet that like there was nothing for a really long time and then suddenly there was kind of everything.
Well, yeah, the major theory is that most of the water that we have and probably life also was brought by comets.
Right, but so like what's so different between saying like it was comets and it was these tiny little spheres?
Or it was aliens.
Not a whole lot.
Dumping spheres on us.
Yeah.
Well, the other problem I have with it is that we should be finding them everywhere on the planet.
But we are, aren't we?
No, I mean
we're finding similar rocks.
Similar rocks in other places, but they're kind of in concentrated places. Like that doesn't really kill the theory entirely, but I would think that they would be found pretty much everywhere, and they're not found everywhere.
Okay, well, if I'm going to stand up and defend this, then you also have to remember that what happens when there's geologic upheaval, and let's say they're all over, and then volcanoes happen and things,
Floods.
and
Floods
well, not
happen.
floods so much, but plate tectonics. So plates are getting eaten up, and that material is getting pulled down and melted down. I mean, there's a lot of geological reasons why we might not find it everywhere.
Yeah.
I don't know,
Yeah,
but if I'm going to offend it, I can look at it from that perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we have just one more theory on
Another theory.
well, this is one more piece of if the moon is not real, or if it's not a natural formation. And this one's pretty awesome. It is it's a renovated planet, and it was a hotel planet. And that hotel planet was drugged to Saturn so that the residents or the people staying at that hotel planet could see the beautiful rings of Saturn, and then eventually the hotel went out of business, and they just left it there. It's a derelict
Maybe it didn't go out of
building.
it. So now, but when you say it's a renovated planet, do you mean it's an artificial structure, or it's just a planet that somebody drugged there?
I'm not saying either, because I've seen both directions where some say they took this planet, they shaved it down, they made it into the shape that they needed, and then they drug it there. And then I've seen some that say, oh no, it's completely a construct.
And my big argument on that, right, even though I am the alien advocate, right, is that if there were that many species that intelligent to create something that came to our solar system, they would have visited us by now. They would have made their presence known to us by now. Because we have been sending pleas out to the universe for so long in radio waves and other waves, right? Saying, hey, we're intelligent, come pay attention to us.
But if that moon went out of business before before we had algae on this planet,
That's the thing. Is
and we're a